She laughed across the table, loud and certain. You still code in pajamas, right? Cute. I smiled and said nothing, my fingers tightening around the coffee cup. The porcelain was warm, but the heat did little to melt the cold knot in my chest. Jessica's laughter bounced off the glass windows of the family dining room like she'd won a game I never agreed to play. Outside, cherry blossoms danced in the Seattle breeze. Inside, my sister's words hung heavier than the air. Her voice, sharp with amusement, made the room shrink. My parents sat across from us, choosing silence over intervention. Uncle Lam, as always, chuckled without understanding, while my mother offered a nervous sip of mimosa to avoid eye contact. Jessica crossed her legs and tossed her hair over one shoulder. Her nails were perfectly manicured, tapping the stem of her champagne glass like punctuation. I mean, seriously, it's been, what, 3 years since you graduated? She asked, not even waiting for an answer. Still doing that remote thing no one understands? I reached for the jam, spread it calmly over a slice of toast. My hand didn't shake. That part of me was long trained. You know, she went on, leaning forward just enough to make sure the whole table was listening. At some point, you have to admit the dream didn't pan out. There it was, the line she loved most, the one that belittled me while pretending to be advice. I used to rehearse comebacks. I'd write them in notebooks, whisper them into my pillow, replay the scene in my head for hours after a family dinner. But not today. Today, I just took a bite of toast, chewed slowly, and nodded once, like her comment had value. From the corner of my eye, I saw Dad check his watch. Mom cleared her throat. Uncle Lam complimented the eggs. Classic deflection. I used to ache in this silence. Now I found comfort in it. Because silence was where I worked best. My sister had no idea that 3 days ago, I sat in a closed-door meeting, approving a proposal to double the headcount on our systems architecture team. She didn't know that the green-lighted budget included a new junior analyst position. She certainly didn't know she had just applied for it. She wouldn't recognize my name, even if it was at the bottom of her contract, because officially it wouldn't be. Jessica lived for applause. I lived in the code that processed every payroll file she'd one day receive. She snapped her fingers and laughed again. You know, I bet your little laptop couldn't even handle the programs I work with. My laptop had once run simulations for an AI model used by a European healthcare network. But sure. You're awfully quiet, Em, Jessica teased, pretending concern. Still writing those fantasy stories about tech dreams? She's just focused, Mom murmured. Always has been. Focused, yes. Fantasizing, never. There was a pause as our aunt refilled a pitcher of orange juice. I could feel Jessica's smirk without even looking. She loved these moments, when I said nothing and everyone interpreted it as lack of confidence. But quiet is not absence. It is a choice, a strategy. I had spent years crafting my empire in the shadows of her spotlight. While she twirled on stages, I stayed up till dawn, debugging broken logic chains. While she launched a fashion brand that collapsed under mismanaged capital, I co-founded a data firm that silently integrated into government finance systems. I wasn't unknown. I was deliberately unseen. Jessica leaned back and took a smug sip of her drink. Anyway, I've got a new plan. There's this fast-growing tech company, Data Nest, I think. They're hiring. I already sent in my application. It's time someone real handled their budget. Her voice rang with satisfaction. She didn't see the flicker in my gaze, didn't notice the shift in my posture, because I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just kept buttering my toast. Mom nodded approvingly. That sounds promising, dear. Yeah, Jessica said, tilting her chin up. I mean, if they pass on me, it's their loss. No one else said a word. The room floated for a moment in the soft clink of cutlery and the faint hum of morning jazz. I reached for my coffee, took a sip. Still warm, still bitter. And very soon, Jessica would be working for a team whose budget was structured line by line under my supervision. She would receive onboarding emails approved by me, attend orientations built from policies I wrote. Her monthly salary would move through a chain of approvals ending with a single name, E. Tran, co-founder, technical architect. She wouldn't notice at first. That's the beauty of being ignored. You learn how to leave a signature in places people never check. She started talking again, but I stopped hearing the words. I was already visualizing the payroll flow, her name in the ledger, her email on the access request, the folder she'd opened on her first day, labeled New Analyst Training Resources. All approved, all clean, all mine. She had no idea. I stirred my coffee and thought, funny. I signed the salary slip for her future manager yesterday. Her resume was neat. Her cover letter, generic. She had no idea she just walked into my world. It was nearly midnight when the file appeared in my inbox, buried between a tax compliance update and a product launch roadmap. I didn't need to open it. I knew the cadence of her writing. Fluff over substance, that self-assured tone she always used to hide that she never prepared. But I opened it anyway. Subject, candidate application, budget analyst, Jessica Tran. There was the photo, blazer, safe smile, neutral background. I almost admired how well she packaged herself. Safe, marketable, devoid of self-awareness. The resume was clean. 2 years at a mid-sized accounting firm, short stint consulting after the layoff, vague numbers meant to impress someone who didn't look too closely. The cover letter was even less inspiring. Results-oriented, cross-functional, dedicated to financial clarity. Hollow phrasing from someone who never understood the systems beneath her spreadsheets. I leaned back in my chair. The room was quiet except for the low hum of the HVAC and the blue pulse of the server status lights blinking through the screen. The city outside was cloaked in silence, but in here, everything buzzed, alive with data, movement, my control. Jessica didn't know what kind of company she was walking into. To her, it was just another fast-scaling tech firm. She probably imagined kombucha in the kitchen and beanbags in the break room. What she wouldn't see, what no one ever did, was the invisible scaffolding I built under every contract, every function, every approval flow. She wouldn't see me. That was the point. A Slack ping echoed through my laptop speakers. Daniel Cruz, 10:57 p.m. Just flagged a new app in the analyst funnel. Recognize the name? I smiled. Emily Tran, 10:58 p.m. She's my sister. A moment passed. Then, Daniel Cruz, 11:01 p.m. Didn't know she was in finance. Emily Tran, 11:01 p.m. She isn't, but she thinks she is. My phone buzzed. Daniel was calling. You're up late, I said, answering with one hand while scrolling through her application metadata with the other. She applied, he said. I mean, seriously? She doesn't know, I replied. She's going to find out. I let the silence stretch. He was right. Eventually, Jessica would realize where she'd landed. But by then, it wouldn't matter. The trap wasn't in the exposure. It was in the truth. Quiet, unshakable, permanent. She deserves a fair review, I said. No more. No less. Daniel sighed. You're colder than you look. I'm practical, I heard him typing in the background. Probably tagging HR to initiate next steps. He was always 2 steps behind when it came to revenge, but 5 steps ahead in trust. That's why we worked. Want me to reject her? He asked. No, I said. Let's see how she performs under silence. 1 click and the status changed from pending to advance to round 2. I didn't feel anything. No triumph. No spite. This wasn't a move to hurt her. It was an experiment. I wanted to see how she would act when no one clapped, when no one reminded her of her brilliance, when the only voice she could hear was her own self-doubt echoing in the quiet. Daniel cleared his throat. We're not going to tell anyone, right? No one knows I exist anyway, I said. Half-truth. You exist, just not in pictures. That's the only kind that lasts. He laughed softly. All right, HR's got it now. She'll get the call tomorrow. Let her in, I said. I want to see what she does with a system she didn't build. He paused. She'll never see you coming. I smiled, then hung up. The screen dimmed slightly as the Slack thread closed. I opened the internal portal. Our approval system didn't require my name on public-facing documents. Daniel was the front-facing co-founder. I was the architect behind the curtain. But everything passed through me. Access, budget, training, compliance. I scrolled through the onboarding flow. Jessica's name now lived in our hiring pipeline. Tentative start, 2 weeks. Reporting to a manager I hired last quarter. Salary tier approved last month. I switched tabs to the finance tools. My fingers hovered over the payroll queue. Clean as always. I clicked once, then opened the signature register. Typed a single note into the approval logic field. Verify all future signatures. E-Tran, ID number 0172. Who's this E-Tran person? A junior analyst whispers behind the coffee machine. They sign off on everything, but no one's ever seen them. Jessica didn't react at first. She stood there, pouring lukewarm coffee into a company-issued ceramic mug, distracted by her own list of tasks for the day. But the name caught on something in her mind like a snag in a sweater. E-Tran. She had seen it yesterday, at the bottom of a budget reallocation request for the AI deployment project. Approval signature, E-Tran, ID number 0172. She remembered thinking it looked oddly familiar, but in the haze of meetings and Slack notifications, she'd let it slide. Now the name floated back up, wrapped in the tinny echo of Sasha's voice. The junior analyst stood on tiptoe, whispering like the pantry air itself could carry secrets. They say this E-Tran person doesn't even work on site, like a ghost, always working remote. But every big decision, boom, signed by them. Jessica blinked. Have you ever met them? Nope, Sasha said, eyes wide with curiosity. Never, but they must be powerful. Even Daniel Cruz answers to them on the back end. She lowered her voice. Honestly, I think they're like a shadow founder or something. Jessica forced a chuckle. Sounds like you've been reading too many Reddit threads. Maybe, Sasha said, sipping her drink, but metadata doesn't lie. Jessica returned to her desk in the finance pod, but her mind was no longer on invoice timelines or departmental burn rates. Instead, it spun around a name, a signature, a file she hadn't fully questioned until now. She opened her laptop, navigated back to the internal archive system, and located the budget file from the AI deployment. There it was again. E-Tran, ID number 0172. She clicked into the metadata tab, a habit left over from her auditing days. The author's internal ID triggered a redirection error. Profile blocked. She frowned. Usually you could at least see the job title or department, but this one was walled off, like it didn't want to be seen. Jessica tapped her nails against the trackpad. The rhythm was unconscious, sharp, the way she always clicked when she was close to something and didn't yet know what. The more she thought about it, the more it bugged her. Tran. The last name echoed louder now that it had a shadow behind it. She did a directory search. Tran, comma. Half a dozen entries came up, none with the first initial E. She ran a permissions report. Still nothing. She dug deeper. 15 minutes later, buried in a PDF on past quarterly audit trails, she found a revision history log attached to a now archived executive memo. Near the top, authored by E-Tran, co-founder. Her throat tightened. Her mouse hovered over the name. She scrolled down to see the timestamp. 5:13 a.m., 2 years ago. The memo had been sent 3 hours before the firm announced its Series B funding round. That wasn't a contractor. That wasn't just someone who signed things. She opened the payroll system. Her fingers moved slower this time. Deliberate. The UI loaded in sleek blue gradients. She navigated to her profile. Standard stuff. Role, department, direct manager, salary tier, tax forms. Then the approval log. Her latest paycheck had 3 checkpoints. HR, department lead, and at the bottom, final approval, E-Tran, ID number 0172. The room grew very quiet. The office buzz faded. The pinging of incoming messages, the murmurs of conversations at other desks, muted, irrelevant. Her heart picked up speed. She clicked into the PDF copy of the payroll summary, opened the document properties, and read the metadata line by line. Document owner, E-Tran author. Role, founding partner, financial authority, confidential access tier 1. Her mind whirled. E-Tran Emily. It couldn't be. Jessica blinked hard, like clearing dust from her vision. The coffee on her desk had gone cold. Her fingers felt numb against the keyboard. She whispered aloud, barely hearing herself, "Wait, Emily?" The realization was neither explosion nor collapse. It was pressure. Silent, inescapable, a downward force on her lungs. Emily, her sister. The one she'd mocked for being invisible. The one who never spoke up at family dinners. The one she thought was drifting, directionless, living off pity and nostalgia. The one who sat quiet through every jab, every assumption, every dismissal. That Emily had been signing her paycheck, had built the system she now worked inside, had approved her role, had power, real, structural, undeniable power. Jessica stood. She didn't know where she was going, not exactly, but she needed air, movement, space. She grabbed the printout, still warm from the tray, and stared at the signature line again. Not just a name, a claim, a truth that bent everything she'd assumed into something unrecognizable. She pressed the sheet flat with trembling hands, stepped out of the finance pod, and whispered, "If it's really her, then everything changes." I turned the corner, and there she was, frozen in the doorway like she'd seen a ghost, except this ghost had root access. The hum of servers was the only sound in the hallway, a steady pulse beneath the concrete and steel bones of the 9th floor. I liked it here, the cold stillness, the green lights blinking in silent code, the hush of machines doing exactly what they were built to do. There were no performance reviews here, no applause, just function, precision. I was reviewing a security update, one I'd scheduled 3 weeks ago, but only now had the quiet time to confirm. A flagged IP had attempted a credential escalation. Nothing dangerous, nothing malicious, but curious. Curious enough to bring me here, after hours, where very few people had access. Then I heard footsteps. Not from Daniel. He never moved this lightly. A softer cadence, hesitant, heels slowing with every step. I turned toward the hall, and there she was, Jessica. She stood just outside the glass double doors, hand still hovering over the biometric reader, eyes locked on me. Her expression didn't match the usual smirk or condescension. This was something else. Shock, disorientation, calculation. She didn't step forward. I didn't say a word. The blue glow from the server stack lit her face unevenly. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "What are you doing down here?" she asked, voice tight. I watched her carefully. She was trying to sound confident, but I recognized the shift behind her eyes, the realization that something didn't fit, that the world she thought she understood had an extra layer she hadn't noticed before. I didn't move. "I have access." This area is restricted. I mean," she stammered, trying to frame it as a policy issue. "Only senior-level engineers and—" I tilted my head. Jessica's gaze fell to the badge clipped to my belt. She squinted, and then Daniel's voice cut through the air behind her. "Emily," he called, stepping into the hall from the opposite side, holding a manila folder. "Need your sign-off on the AI deployment plan. Shouldn't take more than a minute." Jessica turned, slowly. Daniel didn't notice at first. He stepped forward, flipping the folder open, already halfway into his briefing. "I've highlighted the model drift stats, but the budget matches your ceiling, and we've got room if you want to loop in QA." Then he looked up and froze. Jessica stared at him, then at me, then back again. Her voice came out hoarse. "Wait, Emily?" Daniel's brows lifted, then fell. "Oh," he said, finally catching up. "Right." I could see the gears clicking into place in Jessica's head. Every file, every signature, every locked profile. She didn't speak for a long time. When she finally did, the words cracked like dry leaves. "You're the co-founder?" I didn't blink. "From the beginning." There was no drama in it, no edge, just fact. Jessica didn't move, didn't nod, didn't fight. Her hands dropped to her sides like someone had unplugged her. I saw it then. That moment of collapse. Not the kind that made a scene, but the kind that rewired your sense of gravity. Her silence said more than any accusation ever could. For years, she'd painted me as the sibling in the background, the passive one, the invisible one. Now she was the one blinking through shadows, searching for a version of me that fit what she'd always assumed. It wouldn't come. Daniel cleared his throat. "I'll leave you two," he muttered, sliding the folder into my hand before slipping back into the hallway. Jessica stepped into the room. Her voice, when it returned, was quieter. "You've been here this whole time? All this—" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She looked around as if trying to make sense of the space, like the blinking green lights might somehow lie to her. Finally, she took a breath. "You've been signing my paychecks." I replied, "If you weren't qualified, I wouldn't have." I didn't need her to apologize. I just needed her to stop seeing me as someone she once outshined. The rain tapped gently against my apartment window, a soft, steady rhythm that made the whole city feel like it was holding its breath. I sat cross-legged on the floor, a navy linen notebook resting on my lap, the ink pen already uncapped. The card beside me had been rewritten 3 times, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly how much was enough. Jessica didn't need a lecture. She didn't need forgiveness. She needed space. I slid the pen into the loop inside the notebook, folded the card once, and tucked it into the front pocket. Then I closed the walnut box around it all. Clean, quiet, deliberate. The next morning, I handed it to the internal mail assistant in the elevator, no name on the return tag. "Please deliver to Jessica Tran," I said. She didn't ask questions. Later that afternoon, I slipped into the break room just past 2, the way I always did, after the lunch crowd but before the coffee rush. I didn't expect to see Jessica there. She stood by the sink, her back to me, holding the pen. I recognized the glint of it from across the room. The notebook was tucked beneath her arm, corners softened already like she'd been turning pages. She hadn't touched the tea she was brewing. When she turned, she didn't smile. Her eyes found mine and paused, not out of defiance, but because she hadn't figured out how to frame this moment. She spoke first. I got the notebook." I nodded. She looked down, then back at me. "The pen writes smoothly." I nodded again. A breath passed between us, neither hostile nor warm, just real. Jessica shifted the notebook in her arms. "I didn't try to understand you before," she said. "I thought, if someone didn't announce themselves, they had nothing to show." I didn't respond. I wasn't here to relieve her guilt. She took a shallow breath, then smiled, barely. "You're not what I expected." "I never tried to be," I said. She gave the tiniest nod, then stepped aside so I could reach the kettle. She didn't linger. She didn't need to. That night, while checking budget files, I spotted a flagged submission in the internal CSR queue, Jessica's name at the top. Proposal title, "Touch the Future Objective. Establish a mentorship series for female interns in data and tech roles, featuring senior engineers across departments. Quarterly sessions, open Q&A, technical skill building, and long-term mentorship pairings." It was simple, well-organized, purposeful. I scrolled to the last page, not expecting anything more than logistics. But there, under inspiration, in italic font, was a line that stopped me cold. Emily Tran, the quiet architect behind every line. I blinked. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't performative. It just was. No embellishment, no exaggeration, just a truth she had finally seen. I clicked approve and closed the tab. The hallway was quiet when I stepped out of my office 2 days later. I was heading toward the west stairwell when I saw her. Jessica, no clipboard, no show, just walking toward me like any other employee. She passed by without slowing. But just as she crossed my shoulder, she whispered, soft enough that only I could hear, "You don't have to forgive me, but I'm not who I was." 5 years in the shadows, and my name finally echoed through a room I helped build. The chandelier lights cast a shimmer over the glass-paneled atrium, refracting like broken constellations across the marble floor. Guests in black suits and navy gowns floated from one cocktail table to another, murmuring admiration for Data Nest's growth, the champagne, the panoramic lake view. But I was behind the curtain. My fingers toyed with the clasp of a silver bracelet as Daniel stood near the stage, talking to the MC and double-checking the order of the program. He looked back once, gave me a nod, then turned to face the crowd. The lights dimmed. 5 years ago, he began. 2 people sat in a borrowed garage with a whiteboard, 2 used laptops, and one insane belief that we could build a platform that helped organizations not just manage data, but truly understand it. A smattering of polite applause, then silence again. Daniel continued, voice warm, practiced. You all know me. I'm the one who talks too much on panels and sends too many emails. But the person who made this company real, the one who built it line by line, is someone most of you have never met. I exhaled slowly. And tonight, Daniel said, turning toward the wings, I'd like you to meet her. The MC raised the mic. Please welcome the co-founders of Data Nest, Daniel Cruz and Emily Tran. Applause. Louder than I expected. Sharper. Real. I stepped out into the light. I'd chosen a black dress. Simple, fitted, unembellished. My hair was pulled back. No jewelry except the bracelet. I didn't need to perform. I just needed to show up. The applause didn't fade. Not at first. It filled the air like a long, overdue exhale. I walked slowly toward Daniel, who offered the mic with a grin. I took it, held it, breathed in. Hi, I said, voice a little too close to the mic. I heard a soft laugh ripple through the audience. Gentle, not mocking. I'm Emily Tran, and I guess for many of you, this is the first time you've actually seen me. The laugh came again, fuller this time. I'm not a great speaker, I continued, and I never imagined I'd be standing on a stage. But 5 years ago, Daniel and I had 2 things, an idea and a belief that technology could be built quietly, carefully, with trust. I paused. I never needed the spotlight, but tonight I wanted to show up. For you. For us. A beat, then applause, not polite, not performative. Full. I scanned the crowd. Faces I didn't know, board members, engineers, interns, and then, near the back, I saw her. Jessica, no makeup, a navy dress, one hand clutched a glass of champagne she hadn't touched. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes, they didn't flinch. She saw me, and she didn't look away. After the gala, I found a new submission waiting in my inbox. A mid-quarter budget plan for the AI mentorship expansion. 2 names on the signature line, prepared by Jessica Tran and Emily Tran. I stared at it for a moment, then I clicked approve. 2 days later, we gathered at the Tran house for Sunday brunch. The same dark wood chairs, the same sunlight filtered through striped curtains, the same waffles, fruit bowl, pot of overbrewed coffee. But something had shifted. I sat beside the window. Jessica arrived 5 minutes late, as always, but there was no click of high heels, no bright red lipstick, just a white blouse, jeans, hair pulled back, face bare. She gave me a small nod as she sat. I nodded back, no words. Uncle Lamb chewed on a slice of bacon and turned to me, oblivious as ever. So, Emily, he said, mouth half full, you still freelancing? Or just typing up codes for fun? I didn't answer, because I didn't have to. Jessica set her coffee cup down, steady and clear. She runs a tech empire, Uncle, she said, looking straight ahead. She's why I have a job. For years, she was the silent architect, dismissed, overlooked, underestimated. But when the curtain lifted, truth stood taller than any spotlight ever could. Some victories aren't loud. They arrive wrapped in restraint and signed in quiet power. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates long after the echoes fade. And perhaps the sharpest revenge is never vengeance at all, just being undeniable,